Guys, do we have any Halo fans here? Yes, one of my favorite games of all time. I'm very, very excited. Please welcome to the stage, it's Stephen Downs.
Hi there.
Hi, hello again.
Good to see you on this side of the pond, as they say.
Yes, because I was just saying to Stephen, I interviewed him in the UK back in December.
Yes, that was our first trip there, and it was a lovely time.
You've been to the UK before, right?
No, that was actually my first trip.
The first trip ever?
Yeah, other than passing through the airport, that was my first trip. But we're going back in... well, I don't know that it's official, but we might be going back this summer to London. So, yeah.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to let me know.
I will.
Yeah, do let me know.
Indeed.
Stephen, we're here to talk about Halo, but I wanted to go back to the very beginning because before Halo, you were doing, you were a disc jockey in Chicago.
Yes, yeah, among other places, yeah.
I'm going there next week.
To Chicago, great. Not the greatest time of the year to be there, but the pizza's always good. So you'll be fine.
I'm going to eat my face.
Yeah, people do that. Yes,
it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And you did commercial voice work as well.
Yes. So my career began really as a radio disc jockey. That was sort of an outgrowth of a love of music, and from that. The voiceover sort of became a natural extension, and when I moved to LA in the 70s, 80s, sometime, that's when I really started to pursue voiceover as a second career, and it was mainly commercial work for the most part, until something happened in 2001 and changed everything. So.
Oh, I'm about to move to LA in August, but I wanted to ask you, what was it like cutting your teeth as a younger man trying to get about LA? Was it difficult back then?
I loved LA, as the song goes. I loved it. I mean, it was. If you're going to be in the entertainment business, obviously it's the place to be, and I loved everything about it. I loved the energy and the excitement and all that, and it was a great time so I moved there in 1978 until 1991. And it was a great time in radio. It was a great time in rock radio in particular. Yeah. The rock radio stations were number one, and all the good and the bad and the interesting that goes with that. And but I really had a great time and met a lot of rock stars and all that sort of thing. So it was a good time.
So you were doing the commercial voice work.
Yeah.
You were a DJ as well. So how the heck did Halo happen? How did that land at your door?
There's an expression. My wife is also a voice actress, and a friend of hers gave her a really good piece of advice that was passed along to me, and I pass along to you, no matter what field of endeavor you might be in. And the advice was never get out of line, because you just never know one day that brass ring is going to come flying around, and you have to be ready to grab it. So Halo was, one of those happy accidents that, to me, as a voice actor, you're always constantly auditioning and usually constantly not getting the job. That just goes with the business. And Halo was the only significant job I ever got as a voice actor where I never auditioned for it, because Marty O'Donnell, who was with Bungie and was one of the founding fathers of Bungie and of Halo and all that, and cast all the voices for the Bungie games, used to listen to me on the radio and just called me and said, this might be a fun thing for you to do, and we think you'd be right for it. So it's just one of those things that comes along, and if you're lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, which I was, it became a life-changing experience.
Was there before you? There's one like before. Felt like we needed a bit more there. It's like the one lone person in the back. Thanks, guys. And was there ever a point you said, your wife was like, stay in line before you got the Halo gig? As a voice actor and doing everything else in the industry, did you ever think, I just want to step out of line and just give up?
Never. That never occurred to me. There was a moment in my radio career where things were getting a little bit lean, and I wondered if maybe I needed to make a career change. The problem was I didn't have any other talents. I had no other skill to change to, and I was sort of between jobs at the time, and raising a family, and things were getting a little lean financially, and I remember I had been out of work for a few months, and I remember thinking, maybe you need to think about, I don't know, delivering newspapers or something, but whatever. But honestly, the only reason I didn't pursue it in earnest because I didn't really have a talent to do anything else. So this had to work, and eventually, of course, it did, and things got back on track, and it all worked out.
Like, that resonates a lot because like constantly you go up for things, you're told no. It can be very difficult. Yes. Money can get lean. You're thinking, how the heck am I going to pay my bills next month? Yeah. How do you keep that passion going, knowing is it just that this is what I want to do? Is that
it really was that. I mean, I just loved it. I just loved everything about it. As I said, my first passion was really the music and rock and roll, and I just loved being around it, and figured out a way that I could make a living at it. Now I couldn't make. I was a drummer in a rock band in my early days, and at some point realized that this was not going to be a good career move for me. If you ever saw the movie Spinal Tap, it doesn't end well for the drummer. So I thought maybe this isn't really but I wanted to do something that would keep me involved in the music, and radio seemed to be the next best thing. And once that happened, it was just, I often say I've never worked a day in my life because it never felt like work. It always felt like fun. It always felt like I'd be doing this whether you were paying me to do it or not. Yeah. Now, I never tell Microsoft that, but...
Yeah. She stays in this room, you guys.
Yeah, right.
Stays in this room. Do you still play? Because I used to be in bands, but I played guitar.
I play a little bit. Not that I'd want anybody other than my wife to hear, and she's not real crazy about it. But I play guitar, and I have, a set of congas and bongos around the house and stuff like that. But, so I'll when the mood strikes me, I'll stop playing until the dog starts howling and my wife starts throwing dishes at me, and then I'll stop playing.
Also, I kind of love that there was like a yeah for the bongos. Never had that before. Yeah. A yay for the bongos.
Yay for the bongos.
Yay for
the bongo crowd. Good to
yeah, but we're in the bongo zone now, you guys. We're in the bongo zone. I wanted to ask you about the industry. So, in terms of entering this industry, doing the video game stuff, do you notice any particular changes from the time that you took this role to now?
Well, certainly from a technical standpoint, there's been, a lot of changes from let's put it this way. When I was doing the tracks for Halo Combat Evolved, the idea that you would have higher voice talent, that was a relatively new experience. Before that, you would just grab, the guy whoever created the game would also do the voice if they needed a voice, or somebody who, a secretary, come over here and say these lines. There just wasn't a lot of thought given to the story of a video game. And I think, I'm not saying it began with Halo, but certainly when the Combat Evolved came out and was such a huge success, part of the success, I believe, was that the story was so rich. It wasn't just the gameplay. The gameplay was great. The graphics were great. But there was this story happening. And then all these other sort of avenues, the books and the animation stuff, and all those things came after that elevated the storyline, which I think became a new development, and now, of course, it's very common. So I think it's certainly changed from that aspect where. And of course, to me, one of the great examples currently of a story being elevated from a video game is The Last of Us. I mean, it's gone from an incredible video game to, in my opinion, an even more incredible TV miniseries. That I think is sort of the pinnacle right now of where things can go, and how games can cross media into and do it successfully, which is what's happening there, I think.
I love that blending of the media. I
Yeah.
don't, because I think there was a stigma attached. Perhaps there still is, that video games are video games, and that's it's for gamers. But that's so not true now with that example.
Well, I think it's not true now, and I think that's what's so great about The Last of Us is that they, perhaps as good as anybody or better than anybody have been able to take that story and the things that the gamers love about it, move it into another medium, and have people who never played the game in their lives and don't really have an interest in playing in it, but love the story. And that was the sort of the missing link between video game, in video game adaptation to film, was that, and now that it's been done successfully.
What strikes me about the way that you approach the Master Chief's voice, he's not an effervescent character.
No, nobody's ever accused Master Chief of being effervescent. That's true.
I would love to hear
fun-loving, jovial, always with the wisecracks. No.
That's what, I love the hill contested, hill controlled. I quite like the fact that almost it feels like you're really just talking really slowly. Is that the way that you do it? Quietly, slowly into the mic?
Yeah, it's a. Sometimes it's almost, and I sort of feel this a lot of times in the studio when we're recording the lines, is that the chief is almost talking to himself.
Yeah.
And he's almost, his dialogue, and in many cases, especially when he was talking to Cortana, it was an internal dialogue. And so, the voice that I would bring to it, not all the time, but some of the time, was that voice that we all have in our own head when we're talking to ourselves, and or having that sort of dialogue with yourself. There's a sound to that. I don't know if there's a sound, but I had to create one, and that's many times in his when I'm doing dialogue with Master Chief, it's that inner. It's an inner voice, and so naturally it's going to be a softer, lower, more internal, kind of delivery.
I'm so fascinated now, because now when I'm looking at you and I'm thinking about your internal voice, I'm thinking, I'm hungry now.
Yeah.
I need the bathroom.
Yeah, I need a hamburger.
I love that. So that's the internal voice, you guys. You heard it here first. The internal voice of Stephen Downes, everyone. I've also heard that you thought about Clint Eastwood and Fistful of Dollars, and did you think about that kind of vibe going into it then?
Well, that was when Marty and I first got together to talk about Halo. He would talk about the story. So we talk about the Halo universe and the story, and then Master Chief's role in that story. But then, he was trying to get me to attach it to something as a launching point, and his direction was, think of Clint Eastwood when Clint Eastwood was doing For a Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More, and he was this lone wolf kind of character, and he didn't speak much, but when he did, somebody usually got killed. And he said, so that's your. And it wasn't like I was trying to imitate Clint Eastwood, but again, you're trying to, put yourself in his character's frame of mind. And that was the launching point. And then we'd rehearse it, we'd do it again and again and again until we could finally have Master Chief develop his own voice. But we started from that point.
I think a lot of people, because people play the games or watch movies and TV shows after the fact, of course, when you're making it as an actor, you don't know how big things are going to be. You're just doing a job, and you're thinking, this is great, I'm getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting paid, I'm doing a
Quote,
job.
unquote. That's exactly what I thought.
This is great, I'm getting paid. But was there a moment afterwards where you thought, oh, somebody might have come up to you, a review, something you saw or heard, where you thought, wait a minute, this is going to go somewhere?
Oh, yeah. I remember it clearly. And I've told the story, but the game had been out, probably over a year. And I literally had forgotten all about it. Like any other voice job you do it, it's great, and all you're thinking about is the next one. You're not thinking about what it was you already did. The only reminder you get is if you get a residual check from some, that's a reminder that like, oh, well, that turned out well. Well, in video games, there are no residuals, damn it. And so I really had forgotten all about it. And I went down to visit a friend, a girl I was dating at the time, visited a friend in Palm Beach, Florida. And the kids were, I remember walking through the living room and the kids were playing Halo. And it jogged my memory. And I was like, I think I voiced a character in that game. And the kids are playing the game, paying me no attention whatsoever. And they go, who? And I said, I can't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure he was the main guy in the game. And they said, Master Chief? And I was like, yeah, Master Chief. So within half hour or so, there's 30 kids in the neighborhood, all at their front door bringing an Xbox or a copy of the game wanting it signed. And that was the aha moment for me. And I remember we went down to, I don't know if it was a GameStop, if there even was GameStops then, but it was something like that in a mall, and they had a life-size cutout of Master Chief in the window. It was like, that was the moment where I thought, oh, apparently that worked out. And it just snowballed from there.
How does it feel? I mean, even now today, you're meeting folks today at Comic-Con, and you do the circuit, and when people come up to you, like as an actor, which is not always solo, but if you're alone in that booth, you're very alone. That's your work, and you meet people. How does that feel for your soul? Like, what do people say to you?
Well, it's such a great question because it. First of all, being able to go to these events is an opportunity that I don't, most actors probably don't have, where you get to really have a one-on-one dialogue with the people to whose, the work that you did meant something to them, and you get to have an exchange. But the depth of the feeling that many people had and continue to have for Halo and for the Chief and Cortana, at first it mystified me, and I was, I couldn't identify with it. And I felt like I have to identify with it in order to be able to be empathetic to what they're saying and have an understanding of the passion that they were feeling. I mean, when you get a grown man to come up to you and start talking about Halo and literally break down in tears, that's serious, real emotion, and I needed to understand it. And I started to, sort of think back on my own life and think about things that were life-changing to me. And for me, it was the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That was the critical moment, critical mass, where my life changed in every way it could possibly change. From the way I looked, to the way I dressed, to the music I liked, to there wasn't anything about it that didn't change my life, and was the direction that my life would take from that point forward. And really, I could draw a line between the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and sitting here with you right now. I could draw a direct line to that in terms of how it guided my life to where it is now, and how important that was, and the ensuing things that happened to me as an individual. And that's how I could identify with people to whom video games, and in this case Halo, meant so much. That's, rock and roll sort of determined who my friends were, everything. It just, my entire direction. So that's a way I could relate, and that's what I use when I talk to people and they have that kind of, really deep reaction to the game. And plus the fact that I think video games in general is a unique medium in terms of how the participant, what do I want to say,
Well, they live with that character in their own unique way.
Well, and it's more than just watching the character on TV. You're not a passive observer, you're an active participant. And so when you participate on that level, you can't help but get attached to it on a deeper level than just watching something on a screen. So it's been a fascinating journey for me in that way.
Thanks, you guys. How do you, though, if you're in your booth, you know, you got your lines in front of you, have there been times where you've gone, what the hell am I saying? How do you keep it light? Any out of context lines that you can remember you think, this sounds messed up, man?
Not really, although the one thing I remember, and this would have been Halo 3. I think it was Halo 3 where 343 Guilty Spark finally gets his aughts, you know, and the chief has finally just had enough of him, and that's going to be at the end. And it was funny because I know the voice actor Tim Dodabo who voiced Guilty Spark, and you know we know each other on a basis outside of the game, and we have a sort of a friendly little, you know, rivalry, you know, in the guise of Master Chief and Guilty Spark, but. When it came to the time for that moment to come, where the chief is going to end Guilty Spark, Marty, we did the lines and stuff, and then he said, you know, just kind of riff on it a little bit and let's see what you get. So the natural point was, I thought of that. There's a moment in the Clint Eastwood film Dirty Harry, where he's got the bad guy cornered in a coffee shop or something, and there's been all this blah 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 happening, and finally. Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry's got the guy cornered, and there's a famous scene in there where he says something like, well, in all the excitement, I don't remember, was that 5 bullets or 6? And he points the gun at the guy and he goes, well, do you feel lucky, punk? So I did that scene with the chief about ready to axe Guilty Spark. You know, very big dramatic thing. Never saw the light of day. It ended up on the cutting room floor. So that was my big moment that never was. But no, I never. And Halo Infinite, of course, is the one that is most fresh in my mind, obviously, because it's the most recent thing we've done. I had a great director, Paul Crocker, who really understood. He really understood Master Chief, maybe better than I did, and was able to, you know, and the way the game was written and the dialogue was written for Infinite, he really tapped into an area of Master Chief that I could really run with. And so there was, and plus the fact that sometimes, and I can't remember a particular instance, but there were times when I would have something in the script and would stop and he'd go, do you think Chief would really say that? And then it'll be, no, he probably wouldn't. So we would rewrite it, you know, so that we could, and I really appreciated that we had that kind of exchange because I've been doing the guy for 20 years, so I did have sort of a sense of him, you know, and what phrase he might use and not use, so.
I wanted to pivot and talk about Master Chief Chili.
Master Chief Chili.
So Master Chief Chili, I saw a little YouTube video. It was very old, and you were like, Master Chief, you're very excited about this chili. What is it exactly? What's in it?
Well, I would say it's a secret recipe, but it's no longer secret thanks to my stepson who put it on YouTube. But it was really my dad's chili, and it's sort of it's kind of an Irish take on chili, and you know, when you think of chili, you think of Mexico, and you know it has more roots in that area. But we took it. So I mean, we put potatoes in it, so it had to be Irish. So what he did a thing many years ago. Let's see, this would have been 2008 or 10. And he's by profession now. He's a movie editor, and but he was in school at the time, and he had to do a project, and the subject of the sort of a day in the life of somebody who would be of some note. Well, the person he had picked out backed out at the last minute, and so he goes, "Hey, Dad, will you? Yeah, this thing is due tomorrow. Could you, So we would do a day in the life of my life, which at that point was being a radio disc jockey and also, Master Chief. And so it was just totally by coincidence. We were shooting in the kitchen, and I happened to be making the chili that day. And so he said, and it just, from that, it became, instead of my dad's chili, it became Master Chief chili. And my dad, I'm sure somewhere's going, really? Thanks a lot, son. Appreciate it. But yeah, it's my own little chili recipe, and somebody was asking me about it at the table, and for the first time I've actually written down what it is that I put into it, because I never did. I just oh, this looks good. Let's just throw this in here. And the problem with that was, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, and you couldn't repeat it because you never knew what you were putting in it. So now I've actually written it down, and there'll be a future episode on this story where I'll actually put the particular ingredients, but it's the kind of thing where you should do your own thing anyway, and I'll give you the basics, and you take it from there.
Kind of want a Master Chief cookbook. No, I kind of want that.
Wow.
Would you guys buy that?
Let me tell you something. It'd be a mighty thin cookbook. Mighty thin.
Chapter 1, chili. Finn.
The end.
That's it. The end. I've got one last question, or a few things to say, but we have lots of time for fan questions. So please do not be shy. Yes, sir. Please get up to the mic. Oh, please queue up orderly. Everyone be friendly. We're at Comic-Con. I've got one more question to ask, and then we'll get to it. Stephen, if you hadn't found the Master Chief, or the Master Chief hadn't found you, do you think somehow you would still end up in front of us in another guy? Not in another guise, but through another video game, through something else?
I don't. I think I was incredibly lucky. I didn't see that as a path for me. I was still, at the time, very much still involved in rock and roll radio, and that was really my career, and voiceover was the secondary. And I've had a couple of successful voice gigs, commercial gigs, over the years, and was still very passionate about pursuing that. But, I never saw this as an avenue to further my career. It really was right place, right time, and sometimes you just get lucky.
Such is life.
Such is life,
Such
indeed.
is life.
So don't get out of line.
Yeah, don't get out of line. Round of applause for Stephen before the fan questions.
Good.
Thank you. Now, some house rules. One question each. Keep it nice and short so we get through the line. And if you don't get to ask Stephen a question today, you can go see him today and tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. So what's your name? What's your question?
My name's Malcolm, and I've been a huge fan of the original Halo trilogy since 2005. I first played Halo 2. And there's this web series on YouTube called Red vs. Blue. It had 18 seasons. It is a very hilarious fan series made by a passionate crew. And what's your favorite character from either Red or Blue?
I'll be honest with you. I don't really follow it. I certainly know of it, but I've never been asked to participate in it. Jen Taylor has done some things in Red versus Blue, but I really don't. I'm certainly aware of it and aware of their success, but I really don't follow it. So I would be. I'm afraid I couldn't pick a winner there.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you. Next question.
Human rights.
Next question, please. And what's your name?
Hi, my name's Anthony. I started playing Halo back in 2009 when Redbox delivered Halo Wars to me. So I'm an anomaly. Halo Wars was my first Halo game.
Wow, okay, you are.
But then I went through and played the whole series that was available at the time. You went from Halo CE, you were just a empty vessel for the player to experience the story around the Master Chief, to an Infinite proving that you don't need to take your helmet off to still show human emotion. You really prove that humanity in the Master Chief was growing from the faceless machine that we saw in Halo CE. What are your thoughts on the character improvement to the Chief?
Well, I've loved it. In fact, I remember very clearly after 3, and then I did a little thing in Reach. There's a small little contribution I made there, but it was really after Halo 3. I thought that was it. That was the end of the line. Been a great run, a lot of fun, blah blah blah. Then, as we all know, Microsoft bought the franchise. Bungie moved on, and when they finally reached out to me about Halo 4, and I got to see the story, I just remember how excited I was that we were going to take this story of Master Chief and of Cortana and the two of them and move it to a level that I knew, all this unexplored territory that needed to be explored. And to your point about in the very beginnings he was more or less an empty vessel, and by the time we get to 4, there's now going to be a serious look at the relationship with Cortana and the Chief's struggle with his own humanity or lack of, and I was just remember being thrilled, and I thought this is where I always thought it should go, and I was very excited, and I think we advanced that a little bit in Halo Guardians, but really in Halo Infinite, it picked up that story again, and I think that's and I still think there's much more unexplored territory there to pursue, and I hope they do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, friend. What's your name? What's your question?
My name's Montana, and my question is, in the beginning, you would just went in and read lines from Halo 1 to 3, and then as you explained more, you got into humanity between 4 and 5. So was there a difference in you in looking at these lines in the paper in these booths and realizing, I've got to voice this differently now. I'm not just stoically reading lines anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that because I wasn't going to change his who he was, or make him sound different. But I do remember having, some very serious thoughts about it. Okay, I got to step up my game here. And really, Jen Taylor was a big help. Jen, the first time we ever met was the 10th anniversary of Combat Evolved. They were having a big party out in Seattle at one of the conventions, and they flew me out, and Jen lives in Seattle. And that's the first time we ever even laid eyes on each other. And we became very good friends after that. And then when it came time shortly thereafter to start work on Halo 4, they decided to have us work together. And we had never done that before. So we were actually in the same room at the same time. And it helped me immensely pursue the emotional side of Master Chief. And my favorite story when you get to the end of Halo 4 and Cortana's going through her last stages of rampancy and all that, that's a very dramatic scene because the Chief knows he's coming to grips with the fact that he may lose his only emotional contact that he's had in his entire life that he knows of. And so when we're getting to that point, I remember telling Jen, and Jen and I didn't know each other that well. So I'm telling her, look, I may reach for your hand while we're doing the scene to help me make an emotional connection. So if I do, I don't want you to freak out and call the cops on me. So Jen, of course, being the pro that she was, she said, yeah, of course. So we get to the scene, and at that point now, I've completely sort of, shut down in a way and forget to reach for her hand. And she's like holding her hand out, waiting for me to, be my lifeline. And I'm like, over here like this, and we get done with the scene. She goes, wow, dude, left me hanging. Thanks a lot. But I mean, that was the, being able to explore those levels was really exciting. That's one of my favorite moments of the whole recording of Master Chief were those moments.
Great question. Thank you. Hello there, my friend. What's your name and question?
Hi, my name is David. Do you feel that the Paramount Plus Halo show did Master Chief's storyline justice?
Trick question.
Let's keep it positive, guys. Let's keep it positive. It's Comic-Con.
You know, as you know, I don't play a role in that at all, and I think Pablo Schreiber does a great job. I think he's a great actor. You know, Jen Taylor is in it, and you know, she's the, you know, sort of the connection between, you know, the game and the story. You know, when the first season was over, I liked it to the point that I wanted to see the second season. And they're shooting the second season right now in Budapest, and I'm anxious to see where we go from here. But it's a bumpy ride. I mean, I'll be honest with you, and you know, it's what we talked about before about, you know, the transition, video game adaptation to film is not an easy trick, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I think, you know, I think there are real strong possibilities that, you know, they can advance the story in an exciting way and make it stand on its own and I think gamers have to, you know, you have to view it as it's a separate thing. And you can't just take, because it's been tried, where you just take a video game story and put it on the film, except the only difference is you don't have a controller. And of course, that doesn't work. You know, you have to realize, can this stand alone by itself without the video game history that you have with the story? So it's, like I said, I know it's a difficult balancing act, and I'll be excited to see where they go with it in season 2, which will probably be out sometime next year or something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maybe I should be a politician. You know?
I know that was a great answer. I was like, how is he going to handle this? Nice one, Stephen. I vote Stephen. Do you vote Stephen?
There we go.
Yeah, I vote Stephen. Stephen Downs for president. Hello, friend. Name and question.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Hugo.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm swapping words with you, so this is great. Halo is great, and as far as I know, it wouldn't be the same without you.
Thank you.
And that's exactly what I keep thinking about, so I wanted to ask, if something happened at some point to the Master Chief, he finally got his ending, he finally finished his fight, but the series had to keep going, you know, what kind of protagonist would you like to see to take up the mantle?
What kind of what?
What kind of protagonist would you like to see to take up the mantle?
That's a good question. I really don't know, but I'll tell you the first character that comes to, well, there's actually, now that I start thinking about, all of a sudden the flood of characters come into mind, but the Arbiter is the first one. And wouldn't that be an interesting sort of turn of events if it did shift in that direction? I also would love to see the return of Sergeant Johnson, which would be, you know, and it is science fiction, so anything can happen.
Insurrection War.
And what?
The Insurrection War.
Yeah. So I mean, there are, you know, possibilities.
Thank you. Great question, Hugo. Thank you. Cheers. Hello, my friend. What's your name? What's your question?
Hey, my name's also Steve.
Yes, hi, Steve.
I'm at the table. I had a question about your days as a radio disc jockey. Do you have any great stories about, I mean, you said you met a bunch of bands and musicians and... Well,
I have a lot of great memories and some pretty weird ones. The one that comes to mind that was always the weirdest one was I used to host a show called Rockline, which was a syndicated radio show. It was broadcast all over the country. It was a live interview show. And one day we had on Axl Rose and Slash from Guns N' Roses doing a live interview. Now, if you know anything about Guns N' Roses, you know that can always be volatile no matter what. And Slash, God bless him, was stoned to the bone and quite happy with it. And so when we would go to break, and that we would do this often, and then we would go to commercial break, and then come out of the commercial break, and we would plant a phone call, because it was a call-in show. So we would plant a phone call of the guest who would be on next week. You know, oh, guess who's on the line? You know, and then we'd have a chance to promo the next week's show. So that happened to be Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons from KISS were going to be on the next weekend. So we go to break with Slash and Axel, and the producer is saying in my headphones, and Slash can hear it too, okay, with the next call, when we come out of break, is going to be Paul Stanley. You're going to, hey, Paul, how you doing? And then we'll talk about next week's show and yada, yada. So, fine. So then Slash starts telling me stories about his involvement with KISS, and they weren't really flattering stories. I won't get into detail, but they were pretty nasty. What we didn't know, that the engineer had mistakenly left Paul Stanley's line open. So he heard the entire conversation that Slash was having with me about some derogatory things he was saying about KISS. KISS at one time was going to produce Guns N' Roses, and so they had a familiarity with each other, but it didn't end well. And now we don't know that Paul Stanley can hear us. So this goes on for a minute or two. So we come back out of break. Oh, we're back, and okay, who's our next caller? Oh, it's Paul Stanley from KISS. Wow, Paul, how are you? Fine, Steve. I was just enjoying your conversation with Slash over the break. So, I'm seeing my career flash in front of my eyes. So it's going to end like this, right? And then I'm also thinking, what did I say? What did I say? You know, because Slash was doing all the time, you know, and I was not a KISS fan. I wasn't really a fan of I just wasn't a fan. Did I chime in? Did I say, yeah, I always thought they were a bunch of jerks? And I'm trying to think, what did I say? And Paul Stanley, to his credit, was an absolute gentleman. He let it go. We did the little bit, but he just wanted to know that he knew what was said. Slash thought it was the funniest thing that ever happened. He literally, now remember, he's stoned out of his mind. He literally falls back in his chair. The chair hits the ground. You hear the big thud on the studio floor. I'm just like, I'm done. You know, my career is over. You know, I'll be lucky to get out of here alive. And also knowing that the following week, Paul Stanley is going to be sitting right where Slash is, and Gene Simmons, and Slash isn't going to be anywhere around, and I'm going to be the guy. Again, to their credit, when they came into the studio the next weekend, they were like, yeah, you know, whatever, who cares? It's all rock and roll, you know. So that's my blood-curdling tale of...
Oh, my God. Yeah, I would be like, no, I'm just going to say it, shitting my pants.
Yeah, well, that was pretty much the deal.
Oh, God.
I do believe they had to fumigate the studio when the whole thing was over.
Thank you for that question. Yeah. Thank you. Cheers. Right, we've got time for two more. So you and then the next person. I'm sorry, everyone else is going to have to sit down. Don't look at me. Don't look at me with your sad eyes.
Look at me. I'm long-winded answers.
Just look at Stephen. Don't look at me. Thank you. You know, you can ask him a question at his table.
Yes,
anytime.
Absolutely. We'll be back as soon as we're done here.
My friend, name and question.
My name's Nate. So when you look at the Halo franchise, you kind of see the face, Master Chief, and then something that everybody else talks about is like the music and being like a disc jockey or a rock jockey, I guess. How do you, because the music was building your character as well, just like the music is known for building Master Chief's character, because in the first game, sorry. How do you feel like music can make or break a character? Like, how do you feel it can build up the personality of a character?
That's a great question.
Great question.
Really good stuff. Because Marty O'Donnell, who wrote all of the music for the most part, all the original music from Bungie games, did such a phenomenal job. And I just had, we were out in Vegas a month ago at another convention. That's where he lives, and we had dinner together. It's the first time we've spent meaningful time together in a very long time. And he was so, and is so passionate about his music. And you are absolutely right. The music was as integral as anything else in terms of the story and character development in the Bungie games in Halo 1, 2, and 3 and in Reach. And I absolutely agree that it was pivotal to shaping the character and the highs and lows of the drama of what was happening in those cutscenes. And I just think Marty did just a phenomenal job and just a great talent.
Cool. That's a
Thank you
great
so much.
question. Thank you. Last but not least, my friend, what's your name and question?
I'm Aiden. My question is cheap in comparison. What are some of the weirdest or most off-the-cuff lines that people have requested you do in the Master Chief voice?
Really, the ones that I recall are the ones, are the iconic lines, I need a weapon. Wake me when you need me. Now there are, people sometimes suggest variations on those lines, that, some of which are not repeatable in polite company. And people always ask, well, what are your favorite lines? And I really don't. I think if you had to nail me down on a favorite Chief line, it would be in Halo 4. Towards the end, when he says, she said that once about being a machine. That sequence of him reflecting on who Cortana was to him and remembering that, I thought was a very, it's one of my favorite lines. It was one of my favorite to do. But that's about the best I can come up with.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for the fan questions. Great questions.
Very good questions, yes.
That reminds, when I play Halo 3 with my friends, we usually do it drunk.
Just the way it is.
I'm an adult. And we started to call this thing, when we knock each other out, we go double baby. I don't know why I don't know why.
Double baby.
And I've always wanted to hear you say that.
Well, there you have it.
Thank you very much. Stephen, you've been absolutely lovely. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you twice as well. Once on my home turf, and now on your home turf.
It's great to be with you, and I hope we get to do it again. Maybe in London, who knows?
Hell yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Guys, we're going to do a stage selfie, but before we do, a huge round of applause for Stephen Dowd.
Thank you very much. You folks are great. Richmond's great.